I thought meeting my grandchild would be the happiest day of my life. Instead, my daughter looked me in the eye and called me disgusting. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled and made one phone call that changed everything.
Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day.
I devoted my entire life to my daughter, every paycheck, every ounce of energy, every dream I once had for myself. I poured it all into her. I paid for her schooling, her wedding, even helped her and her husband buy their first home. And when she told me she was having a baby, I thought, finally a new chapter. A grandchild. A chance for us to grow even closer. But the day I went to meet that baby for the first time, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't touch my baby. You're disgusting." Her words hit harder than any punch I've ever taken. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled, my throat went dry, but I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just gave a small, broken smile and quietly went home. That night, I made one phone call that would turn everything upside down. Before I tell you what happened after that, please take a second to like this video and tell me where you're watching from. It means more than you think. From the moment she was born, I made a promise. My daughter would never know struggle the way I did. I grew up in a house where "we can't afford it" was practically a family motto. My parents tried their best, but there was never enough food, never enough warmth, never enough ease. So when I held her tiny body in my arms for the first time, her pink little fingers curling around mine, I swore I'd give her everything I never had. Safety. Opportunity. Love that didn't depend on what was left in the wallet. I worked every shift I could grab. Overtime became a lifestyle. Vacations? Never took them. Hobbies? I forgot what those were. I drove my old car until it groaned like a dying animal because every spare dollar went to her future, her education fund, her comfort, her dreams. Every big decision I made, buying a modest home in a safe area, saving instead of spending, starting a small business on the side, it was all for her. She was my reason for everything. And I wasn't just a provider. I was present. I sat through every school play, every soccer match, every late-night study session at the kitchen table. I patched up scraped knees, listened to teenage heartbreaks, and made sure she always had what she needed, whether that was a new dress for prom or extra tutoring before finals. I pushed her to dream big. "Don't settle," I used to tell her. "You're capable of more than you know." When she told me she wanted to go to college, I couldn't stop smiling. I paid every cent, tuition, books, living expenses, so she could focus on learning instead of worrying about rent. The day she walked across that stage in her cap and gown, I was the loudest one cheering. I remember thinking every sacrifice was worth it. Then came her wedding. When she introduced me to the man she wanted to marry, I shook his hand and told him, "Take care of her. She's my heart." I meant it. I paid for most of the ceremony, the venue, the food, even the honeymoon, because I wanted her to start her new life free of burdens. And when they started house hunting, I helped with the down payment. I told myself, that's what a father does. He builds foundations, So when she called me one afternoon, voice trembling with joy, and said, "Dad, I'm pregnant," my heart nearly burst. I could barely hold back tears. I dreamed of that moment, the chance to be grandpa. I started planning immediately. I'd walk by baby stores and stop at the window, smiling at the tiny socks and little hats. I bought soft blankets, tiny onesies, a few toys, nothing extravagant, just small things from the heart. I even opened a savings account for the baby's future, college, emergencies, anything they might need one day. Every time I pictured holding that child, I felt this warmth in my chest. I imagined the smell of baby lotion, the sound of little giggles, the way the baby's hand would wrap around my finger the same way my daughter once did. I thought we'd spend Sundays together, me cooking breakfast, her husband watching sports, and the baby giggling on my lap. In my head, I could already see it, holidays filled with laughter, park trips, bedtime stories. I thought this was it, the moment our family became whole again. I'm not young anymore. I know time is a gift, and I didn't want to waste a second. I wanted my grandchild to know me, to remember the sound of my voice, the warmth of my hugs. And I truly believed my daughter wanted that too. I mean, why wouldn't she? I'd been there for every single chapter of her life, the scraped knees, the college dreams, the wedding vows. Surely she'd want me there for this one. In the months before the due date, I called often. I offered to drive her to appointments, pick up groceries, help with errands. Sometimes she sounded distant, distracted. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just pregnancy stress. When the baby arrived, I sent flowers to the hospital with a simple note. "I can't wait to meet my grandchild. Love, Dad." She replied with one word, "Thanks." That's it. No heart emoji, no "can't wait for you to meet them," just "thanks." I told myself she was tired, overwhelmed, maybe even emotional from childbirth. I didn't let it bother me. I waited patiently for the call, the one that would say, "Dad, you can come meet your grandchild." I imagined walking into that room, seeing her smile, holding that tiny bundle of joy. But when the call finally came, it wasn't what I expected. And what happened that day, the words she said, changed everything I thought I knew about her and about myself. The first time I sensed something was wrong, it was barely a week after the baby was born. I called, expecting to hear my daughter's tired but happy voice, maybe the sound of a newborn fussing in the background. Instead, she answered flatly, "Dad, I can't talk right now. The baby's sleeping." I understood. Newborns are exhausting, feeding schedules, no sleep, a constant blur of crying in diapers. I told her it was okay, that I'd call another time. A few days later, I tried again in the afternoon. This time, she said she was too busy but promised to call me back. She never did. I waited a day then too. Nothing. I told myself she must be overwhelmed, still adjusting to motherhood. I tried to be patient. But as the weeks went by, the excuses piled up. We're still settling in. The baby's fussy today. We're not ready for visitors yet. Meanwhile, my friends, people my age, were posting photos online of their grandkids. Big smiles, hospital visits, those first cuddles everyone dreams of. And there I was, still waiting for a chance to even step through the door. I tried not to compare. I told myself every family's different, that maybe she just wanted privacy. Still, something inside me twisted every time I saw those pictures. Something didn't feel right. When she did pick up my calls, our conversations felt off. Cold. Mechanical. She never asked how I was doing, never about my health or my days. We used to talk like family, about memories, inside jokes, little things that kept us close. Now it was small talk. Strangers. I tried to bring back that warmth. I'd say, "Remember when we used to make pancakes on Saturdays? Or you still have that silly stuffed bear from your childhood?" But she'd just hum, change the subject, or go quiet. And I started to wonder, maybe it wasn't just her. Maybe her husband had something to do with it. He'd always been polite but distant. Not unkind, just cold. Sometimes during our calls, I'd hear him in the background and the energy would shift instantly. Like a curtain falling. I didn't want to believe he was behind it, but deep down I couldn't ignore the thought. After nearly 2 months of this silence, I decided I couldn't wait anymore. I called and offered to stop by, said I'd bring groceries and the baby clothes I'd bought months ago. There was a long pause on the line. Then she said, "We're too busy this week." "Okay," I said gently. "What about next week?" Another pause. Then she sighed, "I'll let you know." When I hung up, my hands stayed on the phone for a long time. I could feel something breaking inside me, not because I hadn't met my grandchild yet, but because I was starting to realize she might be keeping me away on purpose. I tried to push the thought aside. Maybe it was postpartum stress, maybe anxiety about germs or visitors. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I kept my tone light, reassuring. "Whenever you're ready," I'd say. "I'll be here." Then, out of nowhere, she called me one evening. Her voice was different, brighter, almost cheerful. "Dad," she said, "you can come by next week to see the baby." I froze. Then I smiled so hard it hurt. "Thank you," I said quietly. That night, I marked the date on my calendar with a big red circle. For the next several days, I thought about nothing else. I went to the store, picked out a soft baby blanket, a few small toys, and wrapped them neatly in a gift bag. I set it by the door so I wouldn't forget. I imagined the moment, walking in, seeing my grandchild for the first time, holding them close. I thought this visit might fix everything between us. But I was wrong. So wrong. When the day finally came, I barely slept. I woke before sunrise, made coffee I didn't drink, and spent an hour choosing what to wear. I put on a clean shirt and the sweater my daughter had given me for Father's Day years ago. I wanted to look nice, to look like Grandpa. The drive to her house felt endless. Every red light was torture. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with every mile. When I finally parked outside, I sat there for a second, heart racing, trying to calm down. This is it, I told myself. The moment you've been waiting for. I knocked on the door. After a few seconds, she opened it. No smile. No warmth. Just tired eyes and a blank expression. Still, I smiled and said softly, "It's good to see you, sweetheart." She didn't reply. I stepped inside, scanning the living room until my eyes landed on the small bassinet. My chest tightened. There they are, I thought. My grandchild. I walked over slowly, the way you'd approach something sacred. My voice cracked when I whispered, "Where's my little grandbaby?" She reached into the bassinet and picked up the baby. I took a small step forward, hands out, ready to hold the tiny bundle I'd been dreaming about for months. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't asking for much, just one brief, gentle moment. But as I stepped closer, she stepped back. Her eyes hardened. Then she said it. "Don't touch my baby. You're disgusting." First, I thought I'd misheard. The words bounced around my skull like echoes. My arms froze midair. "What?" I whispered. But she didn't repeat it, she didn't have to. The look in her eyes told me she meant every syllable. Her husband stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed. He didn't say a word. Didn't defend me. Didn't even meet my gaze. He just stood there while the silence pressed down on me like a weight. The room felt cold. My chest burned, my hand shook. It wasn't just the insult, it was the realization that this came from her. My little girl. The child I'd carried through every struggle, the woman I'd sacrificed my whole life for. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, the joy, the laughter, maybe a tear or two of happiness. Instead, I was standing in my daughter's living room like an unwanted stranger. Slowly, I lowered my arms. I forced a small smile just to hide the pain twisting through my face. Without a word, I placed the gift bag gently on the coffee table. I nodded barely and stepped toward the door. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. The air outside hit me like a slap, cold, sharp, real. The drive home felt endless. Every streetlight blurred past as her voice replayed in my mind. You are disgusting. Each repetition cut deeper. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure, as if in her eyes I no longer existed as her father. And somewhere on that drive home I realized something I never thought I'd admit, that my love for her, the love that had once felt limitless, had finally reached its breaking point. When I got into my car, I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, staring at the steering wheel like it held all the answers. My hands rested in my lap, but they still felt frozen midair, like they hadn't caught up to the moment when she stepped back from me. Her words kept echoing in my head. Don't touch my baby. You are disgusting. They weren't just sounds anymore, they were something heavier, sharp enough to carve into my chest. I've been insulted before. Bosses have yelled, strangers have cursed, friends have said things they regretted. But nothing compared to hearing those words from my own daughter. It wasn't just what she said. It was where she said it, in her home, in front of her husband, in front of my grandchild. It was the way he stood there, motionless, silent, letting the moment play out like it was something planned. And maybe it was. Maybe they'd talked about it before I arrived. Maybe he'd agreed to it. The thought made my stomach twist. I glanced at the passenger seat. The gift bag sat there, soft blanket, tiny toys, little socks I'd picked out like treasures. I'd imagined her smiling when she opened it, maybe tearing up a little. Now, those things looked meaningless. Just objects. I'd left them behind because I couldn't bear to take them home, but part of me wished I had. Part of me wanted to turn around, knock on that door again and say, if I'm so disgusting, buy your own damn gifts. But I didn't. That's not who I am. I've never been the man to make a scene, especially not in front of a child, even if that child would never remember it. I didn't want my first and only moment with my grandchild to be poisoned by anger. So instead I smiled, a fake, shaky smile, walked out and let the pain follow me to my car like a shadow I couldn't shake. I sat there for almost an hour. Cars passed by. Neighbors came and went. The world kept moving, oblivious. But for me, everything had stopped. Something had ended, something sacred, and I knew deep down there was no going back. I thought about every year I'd worked for her future. Every overtime shift, every bill I paid, every night I skipped dinner because I was too tired to eat. The tuition I covered, the wedding I funded, the house I helped them buy. I thought about the day she told me she was pregnant, how my heart nearly burst with pride. I thought about how I imagined this visit would be, joyful, warm, full of love. Instead, it became one of the most humiliating moments of my life. It wasn't just that she wouldn't let me hold my grandchild. It was how she said it, the venom, the disgust, the finality. Like I was dirty. Like I was dangerous. Like I wasn't the man who had given her everything she had. By the time I finally started the engine, the ache inside me had hardened into something else. Not rage, just clarity. Cold, cutting clarity. Love doesn't mean letting someone treat you like you're worthless. I'd spent my whole life giving, never asking for much in return. And now I could see what that had bought me, nothing but a place below even a stranger's respect. I drove home with the radio off. No music, no noise. Just silence, heavy and hollow, reminding me of what I'd just learned. Some people will take everything you give, then still look down on you for it. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I didn't move right away. The house looked the same, quiet, still, familiar, but it didn't feel like home. Not anymore. Inside, I didn't take off my coat. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in my old armchair, staring at the floor while the clock ticked softly on the wall. That sound used to comfort me. It used to mean peace. Now it only reminded me of all the time I'd wasted believing my daughter would always love and respect me. I replayed the moment in my head, the way she pulled the baby closer like I was something filthy. Tone of her voice so sure, so cruel. And the way her husband just stood there, letting me drown in the silence. That wasn't just rudeness. That was a message. A deliberate one. She wanted me to know my place, outside, unwanted, erased. And the worst part? I realized I'd taught her that. All those years of giving without boundaries, of never saying no, of always showing up no matter how she acted, I had trained her to believe she could treat me however she pleased. That I'd always come back. That day, sitting in that chair, I finally saw it for what it was. My love had never been unconditional, it had just been unprotected. And I told myself one simple truth. I can't make her respect me. But I can stop giving her the power to humiliate me again. I can stop rewarding cruelty with generosity. I can stop confusing sacrifice with love. That's the day everything changed. That thought, that cold, steady thought, settled deeper the longer I sat there. My will. For decades I'd built everything I had, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. My home, my savings, my investments, every piece of it came from years of hard work and quiet sacrifice. And in that will, my daughter was set to inherit almost everything. She didn't know how much, but she probably assumed she'd one day have it all. That assumption had given her a sense of security, the same security I had unknowingly taken from myself by depending on her respect. If she saw me as disgusting, if she believed I wasn't even worthy to hold my own grandchild, then she wasn't worthy of holding my legacy. I sat there for another hour, the clock ticking like a metronome beside my thoughts. I didn't want to make a rash choice out of anger. But the more I turned it over in my mind, the clearer it became. This wasn't about revenge. It was about correction. About making sure what I'd built went to people and causes that deserved it, that understood what it took to earn every dollar, every brick, every sleepless night. By the time I finally stood up, the decision was made. The next step would be a phone call, not to her but to my lawyer. That night, after hours of silence and planning, I picked up the phone. It was late, but he answered on the second ring. We'd worked together for years, and he knew that if I was calling after dark, it meant something serious. "Evening," he said in his calm, professional tone. "Everything all right?" "I need to make changes to my will," I told him. "Urgently." He didn't ask why. He just said, "I can see you tomorrow afternoon." "Perfect," I replied. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt all day: control. I couldn't control what my daughter thought of me. I couldn't unsay the words she'd spat across that room. But I could control what happened to the fruits of my labor. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was hurt, but because I was thinking. Planning. I lay in bed, eyes open, sorting through faces and names in my mind. Who had shown me kindness? Who had respected me, even when I had nothing to give? I thought of the local youth center that helped kids stay off the streets. I donated small amounts there for years. I thought of the animal shelter that was always struggling to stay open. I thought of my sister's children, polite, hardworking, always treating me with love, never entitlement. By the time the first light crept through the blinds, my decision was final. My daughter would inherit nothing. The next afternoon, I arrived at my lawyer's office right on time. He greeted me with his usual calm, and after a few minutes of small talk, we sat down at his heavy oak desk. I didn't waste words. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I want to remove my daughter from my will. Entirely. Not a cent. Not a property. Nothing." He didn't look shocked. He'd seen families tear themselves apart before. Still, he asked gently, "Are you certain? Once it's finalized, this is permanent." I said without hesitation, "I've never been more certain about anything in my life." He nodded once, reached for a pen and pulled out the file. We went line by line through the current will. Every time her name appeared, the house, the savings, the investments, I told him, remove it. Replace it with the youth center. The shelter. My sister's kids. And with every change, every signature, I felt lighter. Freer. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. Every time her name came off that paper, it felt like a weight being lifted from my chest. When we finished, he made notes for the new draft and said, "I'll have the final version ready within a week." Before I left, he looked at me carefully and said, "Once this is signed, it's done. Even if she apologizes tomorrow, adding her back would mean writing a whole new will. Are you prepared for that?" I met his eyes and said, "If she ever comes back, it'll be for money, not for me. And I won't be here to see it." When I walked out of that office, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. The decision was made, and for the first time in a long time, it was mine. A week later, I went back to sign. The weather was perfect, still air, quiet sky, the kind of peace that mirrored exactly how I felt inside. My lawyer greeted me with a nod and gestured toward the desk. The new will was already laid out, thick and crisp, with colored tabs marking every place I needed to sign. He read through the sections one more time. My daughter's name gone. In her place. The youth center, a significant share. The animal shelter, enough to expand and thrive. My sister's children, each receiving a portion fair and deserved. Each time I signed my name, I felt another thread loosen. Another burden fall away. When he reached the final page, he looked up and said, "Once you sign this one, it's official. I've included clauses to make it nearly impossible to contest. It will stand exactly as written." I took the pen. My hand didn't even tremble. Pen glided smoothly across the page, and when I lifted it, it felt like I had just severed the last chain tying me to her entitlement. He gathered the papers, sealed them, and pressed the official stamp onto the folder. The sound of that seal thunk was the sound of closure. "It's done," he said quietly. I leaned back, took a slow breath, and replied, "Good. That's exactly how I want it." He handed me certified copies for my records and assured me the original would be stored securely. Before I left, he said, "You seem at peace with this." And I told him the truth. I am. This isn't revenge. It's restoration. I'm just putting my life's work where it'll be respected. And for the first time in a long time, I walked out into the sunlight feeling free. When I stepped outside that day, the afternoon sun hit my face like a quiet blessing. For the first time since that awful moment in my daughter's living room, I felt light. The decision was made. The change was permanent. And no matter what came next, she would never again have the power to humiliate me and still benefit from my work. I didn't feel the need to call her or explain anything. There was nothing left to say. I didn't want an argument or an apology delivered too late. I didn't want her tears, her excuses, or that voice she used when she wanted something. She had shown me who she was, and now I was showing her who I'd become. So I went silent. No more check-ins. No more "how's the baby" texts. No more offers to help. If she wanted to talk, she'd have to make the first move. And when she did, I wouldn't make it easy. I didn't block her number, I'm not cruel, but I stopped picking up every call. If I saw her name flash on my screen, I'd let it ring. If she texted, I'd reply with short, polite answers. Nothing extra. If she asked a question, she got a simple yes or no. No warmth, no small talk, no lingering kindness to make her think everything was fine. I also stopped sending money. Before, if she mentioned being short on cash, I'd quietly pay a bill or slip her some extra for the baby. That ended. Completely. Why should I keep funding someone who thought I was too disgusting to hold my own grandchild? First, she barely seemed to notice. Or maybe she pretended not to. When she did reach out, her messages were short and shallow. "Hope you're okay. Baby's fine." Nothing that sounded like love. Nothing that felt like family. But time has a funny way of peeling people back. Through a few weeks, her tone began to shift. She started dropping hints. Little comments about bills, daycare, unexpected expenses. Then came the direct asks. "Dad, can you help with this month's car payment?" "Dad, things are tight right now." I gave her the same answer every time. "I'm not able to." No explanations. No reminders of that day. No chance for her to twist the story or make herself the victim. I wanted her to wonder. To sit with the confusion. To feel the absence of the father who had always been there no matter what. 'Cause the truth is, I didn't owe her an explanation. She made her choice the day she stepped back with her baby in her arms and called me disgusting. That was her declaration. And this, my silence, was mine. Months passed. I started living again. I filled my days with things I'd neglected for years, friends, community projects, small joys I used to postpone. I joined a group that rebuilt old furniture, volunteered at the local youth center I'd supported for years, and spent long afternoons working in the garden. The more time passed, the less I missed her. Or maybe I realized I didn't miss her at all, just the version of her I'd imagined still existed. Then, one afternoon, she called. Her voice had a new tone, tense, serious. "Dad, I need to talk about future planning. The will." There it was. The real reason for the call. She assumed she was still the main beneficiary. She thought time and silence hadn't changed a thing. I stayed calm. "We'll talk about that when the time comes," I said, and ended the call. I could tell she didn't like that answer. But I wasn't going to spoil the surprise. Some truths are best discovered, not announced. And she didn't have to wait long. About 6 months later, it happened. I was sitting on my porch, tea in one hand, newspaper in the other, when my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. Then came a text. "We need to talk. Call me ASAP." I ignored that too. An hour later, the phone rang again. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. "Hello," I said. She didn't waste a second. Her voice came out sharp, frantic, higher than usual. "Dad, why is Uncle Robert telling people you changed your will?" There it was. The secret was out. Robert, my younger brother, was one of the few people I trusted enough to tell. Apparently, the topic had slipped out at a family dinner she hadn't been invited to. I could almost picture her face as the words hit her, her mouth tightening, color draining from her cheeks. I let the silence linger. I knew it made her uncomfortable. Finally, I said, "Because I did." She exploded. "What do you mean you did? You can't just erase me from your will." "I can," I said quietly. And I did. There was a pause, long, sharp, and then her tone cracked between anger and disbelief. "Why? What did I even do that was so bad you cut your own daughter out?" I almost laughed, not out of humor but out of sheer disbelief. "Do you really not remember?" I asked. Silence. Then she said, "No, I don't." I took a slow breath. "The day you told me not to touch my grandchild. The day you looked at me, your own father, and called me disgusting. That's the day." Her breath caught. Then came the excuses. "Dad, I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You meant every word. And now I mean mine." The silence that followed was heavier than anything she'd ever said. I could hear her breathing, shaky, uneven. Then she switched tactics, her voice softening. "Okay, maybe I overreacted that day. But you can't take away my inheritance over one mistake. That's not fair." I leaned back in my chair and said calmly, "It's not a mistake when it shows me who you really are. You didn't want me touching your baby. Now you won't touch my legacy." There was nothing but silence after that. The kind that says more than words ever could. Finally, she whispered, "You can't do this to me." "I already have," I said, and hung up. I set the phone down, exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years I felt true peace. She had taken enough from me already. This time I had taken something back.
Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.